Hey everybody, Zev here, your host at ZZTV's episode of TED Talk Tuesdays. Well, I have to admit, this is a rescheduled show of a show that kind of didn't happen last week. It happened, but it kind of didn't happen. So you know what? If you know me well, I'm pretty resilient with the way I handle technology, right? So I want to let you know that this is a redo, no, being transparent about it. But I also want to thank my guests right here who have been gracious enough to say, yes, we'll come back to the show. Whoop, whoop, right? So welcome to ZZTV's TED Talk Tuesdays. Usually this is a 7 p.m. New York time show. Since this is a rescheduled show, I'm doing this at 2 p.m. New York time show. Anyways, help me welcome my two guests on the show today, Jenny Drescher and also Ellen Ornato. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Hello, Zeph.
Good to see you both here, and thank you for coming back. All right, because you know, you and I know technology can be fickle sometimes, right? Almost like it has a mind of its own, right? So I'm glad that you ladies are coming back, so we get to do this, and I'm thankful that we get to have another round at this conversation. So for some of you who are watching out there, the show, the TED Talk Tuesday shows, is all about watching a TED Talk video and having a conversation about the title. And the title of our show today is The Art of Improv-ing Listening Skills. If you're like me, it took me a little while to listen better, and it took a little bit process to get there. So our ladies here today are gonna help us to get there. But before we get started, everybody, I'm gonna get Ellen and then Jenny to introduce themselves. Go ahead, Ellen.
Well, good afternoon, Zeph. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Ellen Feldman Ornato, and I am one half of Connect and Improv. My background is in training and facilitation. I do all sorts of work in unconscious bias and diversity, in personality type, and in all sorts of stuff that has to do with communication, primarily in the workplace. And Jenny and I have been friends for 15 years, and we started Connect and Improv together 2 years ago.
Jenny, go ahead, Jenny.
That's hilarious. I just have to tell you that. I completely love that. I want to use that app now. So hi, Zeph. Thanks for having us back. My name is Jenny Drescher. Ellen said yes. She's one half. I'm the other half of Connect and Improv. My background is in coaching. I'm a little bit obsessed with getting people to be who they really are, so I do that through coaching, and I do that through our work in supporting people in using their voices powerfully and being their natural selves. So, and I improvise professionally, which...
You know, folks, when that happens on Google Hangouts on air, we're going to have fun. We already had fun round one. This is round two. Ding, 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 ding. So I'm going to do it, right? So for some of you who are watching this, the TED Talk that we picked, actually Jenny and Ellen picked, was Julian Treasure's 5 Ways to Listen Better. So let me get this started, ladies. Why this video? What is it about this video that, that got you interested in sharing this with our audience and our people? And thought this was a topic that was worth having a conversation. 5 ways to listen better. Ellen, do you want to start taking this?
Sure. So one of the reasons that we picked the 5 ways to listen better is that we do a lot of the work that we do through Connect and Improv is teaching people to improve the way that they carry themselves in public speaking and make their voices known in the world. Another part of what we teach is all about being effective in networking environments and trade shows and things like that. And one of the key skills that we find is missing for many people, whether it is in how they present themselves or how they show up in networking environments and trade shows, is their belief that they have to be talking all the time. And in fact, the thing that makes you most to others is your ability to listen well. And so we begin and work on a lot in all of our classes, a focus on our listening skills, getting better at being really in tune with the person we're having a conversation with, and from a public speaking standpoint, that's our audience. So that's why we start with listening as a key skill. It's also one of the key skills for being effective at improvisational theater, which is a big piece of how we teach people.
It's true, especially in business, right, ladies? I mean, we often hear people, maybe some leaders are not most, I would say, that's not their best trait, or maybe they don't listen very well, and it is one of the key elements of being a good leader. What about you, Jenny? What's your thought on why you chose your take on this video?
Well, everything that Ellen said, and then actually I really appreciated what you just said about leadership. And one of the things that makes us tick as a company is that we have a strong commitment to helping people grow as professionally and personally, because the reality is that we're not done till we're dead. We always have an opportunity to just keep on growing who we are, and that's to our benefit, and it's to the benefit of everybody that we touch, everybody whose lives we touch. Yeah. And so listening is a key component of that, because the more we listen, the more we create spaces where people can hear and understand one another. And right now, that's more of what the world needs. So we have there's the direct application that Ellen talked about, and there's also a greater sense, if we look culturally at our own country and at countries all around the world. It's one of the crucial missing pieces in many situations. So expanding that in the interest of creating greater empathy and greater possibilities for peace and progress are definitely two pieces that make us tick, and part of why listening is something we're always so keenly interested in.
That's so interesting, because part of the part of what Julian featured in his TED Talk, he mentioned about he said the art of conversation is being replaced by personal broadcasting, and it can affect our listening skills. How can we address it or manage this, ladies? Because we now know some of us don't have that great listening skill, right? And sometimes it takes a little bit of a learning curve, or a little bit more of an experience, or just somebody just needs to tell you, hey, excuse me, you just need to listen better. Whether you're listening to your teammate or your partner or your client, it's a very important skill to have. And I think in this busy age that we live in, I call it busy and noisy age that we live in, everybody wants to have a say. Everybody want to broadcast their personal opinion, and especially in live videos, everybody can just put on a live video, right, on Facebook Live, and just and broadcast their information or content. But the fact is, the more important skill is the listening part. So, ladies, how can we address or manage this? Ellen, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think a big piece of it is being mindful of how much time we spend looking down at screens and how much time we spend looking up into other people's eyes and having conversations, and noticing how our words land with them and watching their faces. The whole conversation about emotional intelligence is, as I'm having a conversation with you, can I notice the impact that my words are having on you? Can I tell if we're connecting? Can I tell if you're concerned? Can I tell if you don't maybe get it? You can't do that if you're sending, right? If we're pressing send, we're not seeing it land. And I think that's a big part of the disconnect that we have as a society, too, is that people are willing to post their opinions and press send without seeing the impact. And, in a more face-to-face connected society, we don't do that. And we're more mindful of our words with each other, because, as Jenny said, if we're working towards empathy and connection, then we're mindful of how our words impact others. And if we have a question about how it landed, we have the ability to ask.
Yes.
Instead of just sending it off into the whatever sphere.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Jenny, your take on it?
Oh, well, everything that Ellen said, and then I guess what I would add is that one thing I've experienced over the years, I do a lot of listening as a coach. So in addition to the work with improvisation that we do with Connect and, I also do a lot of listening as a coach. And what I have found is that I've reaped the benefits of being a skillful listener. And that's something I think we don't necessarily talk about that as much. A lot of people get corporate training, for example, on active listening, which is a starting point. Mm. It's not the end, it's a starting point. And so when people are willing to take a deep dive into listening, the discovery is that we access a great deal more of what we need by being really great listeners. So an example would be, I'll pull one from actual performance improvisation just because it's fun. If I get to tuning into my scene partner really well and I'm listening to what he's offering, then we together get the gift of creating something out of that. But if I'm not really listening, if I'm not really tuning in, I'm going to miss what he's giving me in the scene. So the scene isn't as invigorating, it's not as interesting. We don't have the opportunity to carry forward an idea or a character or a story or whatever it may be. So that maps directly over to improvisation for work and life. It maps directly over to coaching, that everything we want to access is available to us if we use our keenest listening. And I don't think that that's really taught in regular active listening classes, and it's something worth noticing is, we all want to be heard, we all have something to say. I found that the more I listen, the more heard I feel, ironically enough. because we end up in this space where we have this beautiful co-created sort of dance, in any given conversation or interaction.
And it's almost can I jump in for a sec?
Right? It's like almost complementing each other's energy. We got to know, how to complement the other person's strengths also to bring a great presentation if we get to listen to the other person. Sorry, you were saying, Ellen?
I was going to say that the flip side is true as well. If we are in a networking situation and we recognize that the other person isn't listening, we disconnect. Right? So they don't get as much from us. We're not willing to give as much to them, and it's not just what they're saying. I mean, during our workshops, we have people brainstorm what behaviors specifically turn them off in networking environments. And people say all the time when people are looking at their phones instead of me, when somebody's looking over my shoulder to see who they want to talk to next, and they're only standing there talking with you until they find a next.
Jenny.
Those kinds of behaviors and the absence of listening cause you to think, I not only don't want to spend more time talking to this person, I really don't care what they do for a living, what kind of business they have, and what they might have for me, which is a real disservice to that person because they don't have those skills and they don't understand the impact of what they say and how they say it. They're potentially losing business, and the reason they're going to these events is to get more business and make business connections, right? But they're working against their own stated desires by their behavior and the way that they talk.
I love that you mentioned even networking and how this is all playing into part when we go out and network, because for you, both of you ladies, we met through networking events, right? And I'm such an avid networker, and it's so true what you just said that just now, Ellen, is the fact that people don't pay attention when they're at the networking event, because they're going into that mindset. It's either I have to crunch numbers or I have to meet people quickly. It's all about something, but they're not paying attention. They're not pausing for a moment to pay attention to the other person that they're meeting. And I say this a lot, apart from the listening, which is also why this is very important when in networking, and I think both of you ladies can attest to this, is when we all go to meet somebody for the first time, right? I mention and always tell my folks, even on my live shows, I say, when I go networking, usually it's not about me because I want to pay attention to the next person. If I cannot connect or do business with that person, right, then I would not have a good way to have a referral for him or her or for myself. Because other than just networking and connecting, it's also being a hub for the other person, because who do I know can I send to Jenny and Ellen, right? Who do they know that they can send to me? And I think if we're not listening, this is where in the networking events, when we're going out to, say, connect with people, if we're not listening or not, we don't get better at listening, this is where we're going to miss a lot of opportunities, because when you go home, you're thinking, wait, who was that two ladies I talked to earlier today? All you were thinking about was passing down your cards. And to be honest, right, have you both had that experience where people just want to put their cards in your hands and, oh, I'm this, and just contact me, and then they move on, and before you know it, 30 seconds later, you're looking at the card, you're going like, wait, who is this? Because we're not memorable, we're not unique, we did not pay attention.
Yes.
Had that experience, Jenny?
I have had that experience, and it's funny because when it comes to that unique experience, it really, listening is a crucial piece of our personal branding, because, and you and I have talked about this before on other occasions, where if everybody seems the same, if everybody's got the same title and everybody's coming across the same way, then nothing about us as an individual stands out. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that you can have 10 real estate agents or 10 coaches or 10 widget sellers who are all doing the same thing, but it's how we develop our personal brand that makes us stand out and truly connect with other people. So when we go out and we're acting like that, we're acting like the only thing that matters is that agenda that you're referencing, then we're robbing ourselves and other people of the opportunity to notice what's different about a person. Mm-hmm. Right? Because where you truly are going to connect is not in the service. We can get any service from 10 different people.
Yes.
Anything.
It is the you that matters, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So, ladies, and today in our topic, we're talking about improv. And I know, in your business, it's called Connect and Improv. I would love to just kind of start off with, talking about the art of improving listening skills. So let's start with this, because some of our audience probably just cannot figure out, how improv can play a big role in our business. So maybe, Ellen, you can start us off with just, describing what is improv and why it's kind of important in business these days.
Sure. Well, for any of your listeners or any of your viewers who are not familiar with improvisational theater, the best reference I can give you is the show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Where two or more people step out into the scene, they get a suggestion from the audience, and based on that one or two words, they start creating a reality. Right? They start creating where they are and what their relationships are with each other, and it's through intense listening to the offers that are given to them by their scene partners, they start to build a world that the audience sees these three people transform from three people standing on the stage into something is happening. Mm-hmm. Right? That can only happen through acute listening, through building on what the other people are saying, through looking for what's interesting in what the other person is saying. And in the absence of that listening, it's just three people talking at each other on a stage, and there's nothing interesting in that. So what improvisational theater does, and that training does, and by the way, Jenny and I have been taking classes for 5 years. Jenny actually performs with 2 different professional improv groups.
Wow.
I tend to stay behind the scenes and do other things, but we both use this improvisational approach in all the teaching that we do, and there's a whole body of work called applied improvisation that takes the principles, practices, and exercises from learning improvisational theater and applies them in a business context or a medical context, because we work with doctors and healthcare practitioners as well, right, to improve listening.
Awesome. So, how did you both start with improv, especially Jenny? I mean, how did you both decide later on, you know what, this is what we want to do, and this is our vehicle to help the folks out there, whether the audience, the business owners, or the leaders, to use improv in their business? Jenny, you want to take that?
Well, there's a couple different important pieces. So I first had exposure to improv because our local troupe here in Hartford, they've just opened up a theater called CT Improv is the name of their company. And I had exposure to them through a random workshop at a networking group, oddly enough. And they came and they did a little show for us, and it was a lot of fun. And they said, oh, we offer workshops. So, and I had grown up doing some theater as a kid, and I said, oh, I really want in on this because this is a lot of fun. So I went and signed up for a workshop and said, Ellen, come along, come with me, let's go play and see what this is about. And she was completely on board and said, yes, that's great. And then from that very first workshop, I walked out of there saying, these are pieces that everybody needs to be doing more of. Adults need more play. They need more opportunity to be spontaneous. One of the key pieces from improvisation is spontaneity. It's a skill that we develop. We develop the ability to speak off script and take the risk of speaking off script and break away from the things that we think we're supposed to do. And the reality is that we are all born improvisers. Nobody walks around, with the script. Nobody walks around. We may walk around looking like this, but I'm not actually reading off of the script when that happens. So we walked out of there and immediately said, oh my gosh, these are all the skills that we need in life. We need to think on our feet. We need to listen. We need to focus on making other people look great, because when I elevate you, I elevate me in the process. Mm-hmm. So all of those pieces, those are some of the fundamental elements of improvisation, and accepting what other people say, not necessarily always agreeing with it, but just acknowledging, okay, this is the thing you gave me. My job is now to hone in on it, find something to work with there.
Right.
And then together we'll shape something else. We'll shape the next layer. We'll put together the building blocks of dialogue, the same way that we put together the building blocks of a scene when we're on stage. So the skills are, in essence, the same skills that we need to use every day, but they're not the skills that are being taught or amped up, then we're not building appropriate muscle in those areas most of the time, because we learn other things. So the art of improvisation on theater terms is, for my money, the most important skill set that anybody can learn for real life and business practices as well.
Awesome. And you mentioned briefly there just now about muscles. So what specific muscles, ladies, does practicing improv exercises have for entrepreneurs? Would you, Ellen, would you give us some example? Because we talk about improv muscles, and I just need to know what I should be doing.
Well, absolutely. One of the things, as I said, my background is as a trainer and a facilitator and leading workshops. And so before I started doing improv, my job was to master the content, to go in, to deliver the content, manage the time, and get the people from A to Z in that 3 hours or 6 hours or however the length of time was for the session. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about improvisation. It was about delivery.
Got it.
Right? It was about controlling everything on some level. So improvisation says you step out into the scene because you're following your feet, and you haven't decided until you're standing in that space what you're going to say. So improvisation is an awesome tool to learn for people who feel like they have to be prepared before they can step out the door. For people who feel like I could never speak to the Rotary Club, or I could never do that commencement speech because I would have to prepare for months. Right? So we have people who come into our program. We have one woman who today, actually right now, this very moment, is giving her dissertation presentation for her PhD. Wow. Who came into our program. Oh, I got all full fluff. She came into our program and really had challenges, even speaking in front of a group. And when I did some coaching with her last week, getting her ready for this, she said, I'm good. I have this. I'm like, of course you have this, but her belief in herself is what allowed her to get up and share 15 years worth of research with a panel of people who were judging her. Before that, she was really, it was making her physically ill to even think about doing it. So for people who want to get bigger in life and bigger in their jobs, I mean, we have countless stories of people who've come into our programs at one end and come out the other with a promotion or a new job or gigs to talk about the book that they've written. Not because of our magic, but because of the magic of improvisational theater exercises, which get you to trust the unknown, to step out with confidence, to be aware of where your shoulders are, where your head is, how you're speaking, how you're projecting your voice, how you're making yourself known, and its impact on others. And through this process of learning improv and the exercises from improv, they're empowered to speak and to become their true selves. So what person in business wouldn't benefit from that?
Absolutely. And
you know, what sales environment have you been in where you wished that the person would just listen a little bit more before they tried to close you? Right?
Ding! Let me do that.
Well, plus another thing that Ellen is pointing to inside of that process that really always excites me is that coming out of the industrial economy, right? Coming out of the 20th century industrial economy, where many of us are really risk averse. We're terrified of risk. Entrepreneurs, I think, learn how to take risk because what happens is they take a little risk, they learn from it, they have success or they have failure, but they continue to move forward. That's part of the entrepreneurial journey. But for many people who are either new as entrepreneurs or people who have spent years in the corporate world sort of having to toe the company line, as it were, we teach that this improvisational muscles include taking risk and failing with grace. So we learn how to take the risk and discover, oh, all right, I took that risk and I didn't die.
Just like this week for me, right? Just like this week for me. So
Yes.
the technology fell. Move on, because there's so many things that you can do. Figure it out. Handle your business, right? Hashtag handle your business. Just improvisation. And I love that you both ladies talk about this because many of us, especially when going through challenges, and I think improvisation is key when you're going through some sort of trauma or challenges because it helps you to focus on that that light at the end of the tunnel instead of being in that moment of, oh my God, this is overwhelming or I'm stuck and all that stuff. And I think you're right, and you're absolutely right, ladies. We're all our improvisers. We just need to exercise those muscles and just get better at it. If we were to talk about exercises for our muscles, so maybe you both can give us some examples of what are some simple improv exercises that can help us listen better, because the conversation today is all about the art of improvising and then to listen better. Any suggestions, Ellen?
Well, what I was going to say before I answer that question, if it's all right.
Sure, absolutely.
One of the other key muscles that improv builds is.
I know.
Ready, everybody? Oh, we do our Schwarzenegger pose. Is the whole notion of supporting your scene partner, which translates directly to the workplace. How often in workplaces do we see people being competitive with each other when they're supposed to be cooperating? How many people in a brainstorming session, a quote-unquote brainstorming session, where it's more like an idea-crushing session or an idea-swatting session than it is true brainstorming. And that combination of listening and also making your partner look good means that if you put a suggestion out on the table and we're having this conversation about how to solve a problem, I acknowledge that you said it and ask you, tell me more about why you think that's valid. Instead of saying, we tried that before, or, oh yeah, that could be good, but let's go over here, right? So when we get into situations with teams, one of the very first exercises we use is a very basic one that demonstrates the difference between saying yes and building agreement, and yes but, which is a way of actually seeming like you're agreeing but actually flushing the idea. Yeah. It's a polite no instead of saying no. And so many of us go, yes, that was a great idea, but what about this, this, and this, which really means no, right?
Yeah.
It really does mean no. So the question is, how can we notice how often in our language we're saying no to each other even when we're seeming to say yes, right? And how often we're actually saying yes, acknowledging the contribution of someone else and seeking to build on their ideas. So that focus on building that environment of agreement when we're working with teams shifts people considerably, and they come back and they're like, I noticed how often I was saying but, you know, because we all get our butts in the way all the time.
I love that. And I know Jenny has, I know I've heard Jenny say this in the past. Jenny, what's your suggestion for, you know, a simple improv exercise that can help us listen better?
Oh, there are so many. One of my favorite ways to, well, there's an acronym called Why Am I Talking, which is not actually from improv. It's something I learned as a coach that Ellen and I also use in our teaching all the time. But I've found that integrating it into improvisation is really a good idea. So what happens when we're improvising if we're in a scene? If we're not really listening, so say our scene partner is making an offer of some kind, and we're not really listening, then we're going to miss the offer because chances are we're listening to the little voice in our head that's freaking out about something. Like, right? Saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to say yet next. I don't understand what's happening. If we're listening to that little voice, we're not listening to our scene partner. Yeah. So the acronym of Why Am I Talking or Why Am I Thinking, either one, that's a multi-purpose T right there, is really useful. And one trick that I do when I'm practicing, say, in a networking environment, is I'll actually put that on a Post-it note in my car and look at it before I go into the networking environment, and I'll remind myself, why am I talking, or why am I thinking? Yeah. So I can shut down that inner chatter of because that's going to pull me out of the scene. Yes. And I'll just remind myself that inner chatter is just noise. It's just chatter. It's not something that I really need to be paying attention to. I can send that inner critic on a coffee break. Yes. So, you go and hang out down the road. I'll come get you when I'm done with the event. Yeah. So back to that. So that whole piece there, so the two pieces there that are straight out of improv are quieting your inner critic by sending it away and letting it know, and actually having a conversation with that inner critic saying, yeah, thank you for sharing, not really interested right now, because you have to do that all the time in improvisation. And then also, why am I thinking, or why am I talking? Those are two exercises that they're not even real exercises, they're just reminders. So, I mean, from an exercise standpoint, to directly address your question, it's really just a matter of having a mini conversation with myself.
I love that idea, and I think that brings me back to a conversation that we probably have had in the past, is this word.
What does it say?
Pause.
Pause. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Right? Because that's the most, especially for me, folks, right? If you notice, I am 200 miles per hour all the time. And one of the most important muscles that I've had to learn is it's just doing the pause, right? And we've talked about this, and I think back to the conversation of attending networking events is, even though I'm a talker and 200 miles per hour, I really have learned from some of my mentors is just being in the moment, pause, and listen to the other person. Because if you don't listen, she says, you will miss the opportunities that cannot be really seen. It probably is heard. So you have to pay attention, pause, give the person a chance to talk, right? If the person is just there to give you a card, then you say, next, move on, boom, right? So I think that's a great conversation about all the muscles that we have forgotten, and in just getting to a place where we have better listening skills. And thank you both for sharing that. I do want to kind of tap into this because I do a lot of live videos and live shows, and a lot of my live shows are pretty much impromptu, in the moment conversations. Maybe both of you ladies can, can share one thing that we broadcasters could use from your teaching, maybe a practice or a exercise that we can do as broadcasters just to be better listeners during the shows. Ellen, do you want to go first?
Mm. Well, if it's this kind of situation where you're talking face to face with somebody and you've got an audience listening, if you find your mind rushing ahead to what's the next question I'm going to ask of this person that I'm talking with, discipline yourself to watch the other person on the screen and watch their mouth moving. And keep track with the person on the screen, because your brain really can't effectively focus on more than one thing at a time. So we learned this technique from a woman named Sue Walden. It's called voice mirroring. And what we do is we teach people to focus on mostly the mouth and the eyes of the person that they're talking to try and anticipate what the person's going to say next. Because once your brain is engaged in trying to anticipate what they're going to say next, you are locked on what they're saying, because you can't do anything but listen to them, which puts you in a much better position to ask the next right question, right? But very often, you ask us an open-ended question, and then you go back and start reviewing your question so you know what to ask next. You're not listening, right? And the person might say something super interesting, and you only hear a piece of it, and it might be out of context with what they were saying, because you're not fully listening. So I would say, to the extent that you can, I think, Zeph, you're extraordinary at being prepared.
Thank you.
Right? So, clearly you've been on our website. We sent you some questions. You've asked us other questions. So you are well prepared for this conversation. Not necessarily what's going to occur during this hour, but you know where you're driving the ship.
The conversation, yes.
Right. So to the extent that the hosts can have an idea in mind, and it's not just an open free-for-all, because if it's too open-ended, I would imagine that there might be some dead air space.
Yes. Oh, I love that you mentioned dead air space, and this is what I share with most broadcasters, because most of us, I would say, most of us are pretty tuned in into, okay, I'll just press the go live button, or I just press the broadcast button and I will be live. But what they don't think about is what is the coherence of the ethos of their presentation or their message, right? Because even though you feel like you can wing it, you still need, as a broadcaster, you still need to improvise as you go. Because even though I have, prepared for the show, during the show there might be points or conversations points that I feel could be elaborated. Therefore, I have to be a great improviser during the show, so that would not be any dead air during the show. And I think many people don't understand also, even in the art of, improving, better listening skills and all that, is just we have to prepare at certain level, and just using this technique to get better, not only at presenting, but also at listening, especially during a live show. If we're not listening, and I agree just what you said there, Ellen, if we're not listening, we will not continue a great conversation or even fill in the gaps that will make a great flow of a conversation. So thank you for pointing that out. So boom, Ellen. And then let me quickly also ask you this. Seems like we're going to have to wait for Jenny to come back. But before that, I also want to ask you this. What are some of the common errors? I'm sure there are many that people make in networking situations. So back to the networking conversation, errors that people are making in networking situations that lead to frustration and a lack of enthusiasm for attending any kind of events or conferences, because I think it's very important.
Well, one of the that we struggle with is this whole notion of having a 30-second elevator pitch.
Oh, yes.
There is certainly value to knowing what to say when somebody says, "What do you do?" There's less value to having a rehearsed parsed apart, word by word, nauseating. I'll put that in brackets. I think it's nauseating. Dick. You know, like, I don't know. I'm the dog detuner. I'm just throwing something out there. Because, you know, there's a theory that creates curiosity and whatever. To me, it feels so artificial that immediately I draw back.
Yep.
And the two things that I think of are, this person is really nervous about being here, and they feel like they had to memorize something before they could come in. So that flips my empathy switch. The other thing that it does for me is, this person really needs to chill out and just relate to me as a human and not a prospect.
Yes.
You know, so when somebody says that, I'll go, wow. So what do you do? Right? I'll ask the very same question again.
I know.
Because
Repeat it to them, yes.
I mean, how often when somebody says, I'm the queen of transformation, do you go, oh, I need you? You don't, because it's not real. I don't want to be transformed. What am I going to be transformed into? Like a Disney princess? What does it sound like? Who is that?
Right.
So it's a lot about, so people show up with this really rehearsed way of being that is really hard to relate to. So that would be number one. My number two is that people do this thing we call show up and throw up. Like, they have to tell you absolutely everything they do in the 45 seconds you have of interchange.
Oh my God.
Walk away going, no!
No, I don't have time for that. That's so true. I agree. Yes.
Right? And once again, it's not, it makes me feel empathetic towards them. I feel like you could really use my card if I could get a word in edgewise.
And I think that's also when we all shut down, when we provide too much information, because we're not really connecting. We're not taking the time to connect. Because why? Because we weren't listening in the first place, right? Because it's all about us. It's not about the other person. We think it's about the other person, but it really isn't. When you're oversharing, you're not listening, therefore you can't connect, then how can you be memorable? Or, you know, how can I send the right people to you just in case? So resulting in missed opportunities. I love that. Anything you would add to that, Jenny? We were just talking about, you know, why you think people at networking events can have the lack of enthusiasm for attending events and conferences.
Oh, well, I guess all of those reasons that Ellen mentioned and that you just mentioned about the show up and throw up, and about giving canned answers, and about not feeling like you can be yourself. So feeling like you have to follow that script, it holds you back. So in terms of, are you asking for what are ways around some of those things that cause us to not be enthusiastic?
Sure, absolutely.
Well, one of my preferred strategies, it's going to sound a little ridiculous, but one of my preferred strategies is to challenge myself to be bolder than I think I can be.
Got it.
To be a little bit more of what so if I look at what are my natural traits and how the rest of the world experiences me, that begins with me knowing me and knowing who and how I am. So it starts with knowing ourselves, right? And then if we look at, okay, so what are the things that maybe make me a shiny penny when I walk into the room? And one of those traits is that I'm a little bit bold. I'm slightly unorthodox, so I'm inclined to say things, not in any insulting or a challenging way, but I just leverage my natural tendencies, and I'm willing to try on making bold choices. I'm willing to actively take risks conversationally with people in a way that often makes me memorable, but it also invites them to do the same. So I'm giving them a gift inside that conversation by saying, so show me something that you don't normally show other people, right? And I'm not saying that directly, but I'm modeling it for them. So what happens is that when I make that bold choice and I'm more of that natural self that I am, other people say, well, geez, if she can do it, maybe I can too.
Yes.
right? So there's this little game I play with myself, which is about, what am I being a beacon for today?
Mm-hmm.
What am I being a beacon for? Very often I'm being a beacon for being a little silly, because I'm kind of a silly person. So that gets people to lighten up, and they say, well, geez, maybe I don't have to take myself so, super serious all the time. Maybe if I lighten up, then I'll attract other people who want to lighten up. And so if we bring more laughter into those kinds of situations and we don't take ourselves so seriously, we create more of an opportunity for other people to do the same.
Right.
So I think it starts with knowing who you are and then being willing to turn up the dial on your own natural strengths just a little bit instead of worrying about being something you're not.
Yes. Be the person who you are, because at the end of the day, we want you, not the other person. So be memorable, right? Aim to be memorable. Aim to be unique. Aim to be real and authentic. And I think that's a great way to leave this conversation. So, folks, just wanted to quickly share information with you. This has been a great conversation about how can we use improv in just improvising our listening skills. And before we go, ladies, I would love for you to just share your contact information, just in case our audience out there want to connect with you. So Ellen, maybe you can share the website and talk about it a little bit more, and Jenny can share some social information, because I have all lined up and I'll share them on my screen too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zeph. Once again, thank you so much for this opportunity. Folks can find us at connectandimprov.com, which is our website. And on Connect and Improv, there's an active calendar that is up to date that shows all of our upcoming public workshops and sessions. We're going to be doing 2 public sessions in September, and we're also doing a session for the Middlesex County Chamber of Commerce and for the eWomen Network. So if any of those appeal to you, come out and find us. You'll get you'll get a great taste of the types of ways that we use improvisational exercises to build business skills.
Awesome. And you're at this, right? Jenny, want to talk a bit about your Facebook page? Is this a good place for us to find you?
Yes, you can find us both on Facebook. The Connect and page that you're showing right now. You could just, if you go to Facebook, you can find us at Connect and Improv, and we hang out there. We post articles. Sometimes we post challenge questions to people about what are you daring to do today? Where are you bringing fun into your world today? Where are you going to take a risk and try on something you haven't tried on before, and experiment with how you go about your networking or your speaking. So we love hanging out with people on social media. We have also private pages for our students. So when people become our students, they get a little bit more in-depth access to some of how we teach when they join up in our classes, which is a ton of fun because they get a great support system in one another.
Tons of fun. Whenever you ladies do stuff, it's always tons of fun. So here's another thing, everybody. If you're watching this show, just a quick heads up. Just a quick review. Website is entrepreneurs@soar.com /live, which is the live tab right here. You can watch all our shows live. They're all embedded on our website. But today, our live information, the URL that I usually share is zevzen.live. It's pointing to the YouTube channel, but it will usually point to this page. You will get all the information. We always have our 30-day calendar for the entire month, and you can just go in on this page and you can take a look what's coming up. And at the bottom of the page, you have a calendar. Should you be interested, say, in a show, you can just go there and copy to your calendar. So everybody, this has been great information. And I love this conversation about how can we all, use improv and just getting good at listening better, because in our day-to-day business and life, we all have to be better listeners. It's just not about transmitting or broadcasting our information. It's also about connecting with the audience that we meet for the first time. It makes it a little bit more challenging also in the virtual world. So this is why it's important for us to listen better, listen to the audience, because the audience, the community, they all also have have to say and how we grow our business. And they would love to participate. So that's why this was a great Tech Talk Tuesdays. I appreciate both you ladies, Ellen and Jenny, for coming back to do the redo of the show. And thank you both. All right. Any last words, Ellen, before we leave?
No, just it's been, I said no and then I kept talking. That is a true extrovert. An extrovert will say no and keep talking. So anyway, thank you. Just thank you, Zeph. It's been a ton of fun. I love talking with you, and we're happy to be a part of your community.
Thank you so much. Jenny?
I would have to agree exactly what Ellen said.
Yay!
Nothing else to add. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for watching, everybody. I'm usually on Tuesdays for my TED Talk Tuesdays show, 7 p.m. New York. Be sure to check zevzen.life, which is my website right here. All live information. Go to I always point at the wrong site, right? zevzen.life, and I'll see you in our next show. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching. Bye.